A house askew is one of the not rightest things in the world, and is terrible out of all proportion to its actual visitant. Haunted houses appear frequently in horror novels, films, attractions, and more, but what about them makes them so compelling? More specifically, what about a house do audiences find so scary? The haunted house trope uses the house in particular because the house has both physical and emotional influence. The creepy exterior, or discombobulating interior, can horrify and confuse the audience. The warmth and comfort that one typically associates with a home is stripped away and replaced by an abandoned, dangerous structure.
However, what is it about a house that is ripe for haunting? Seen in films, pieces of literature, and works of art, homes are the places of protection and security. They are the places in which one goes to retreat from the outside pressures of everyday life. This could be seen from a tiring day of work, dealing with people, or just wanting a day to loosen up indoors. They offer relaxation, happiness, and a sense of belonging for anyone who lives inside. However, the reason on why the horror industry thrives on haunted houses is the fact that once an outside presence threatens that sense of safety, there is a true horror that the inhabitants have nowhere to go and are unable to do anything. Like the prolific horror writer Stephen King said in Danse Macabre, "When we go home and shoot the bolt on the door, we like to think that we're locking trouble out." The good horror story about the bad place whispers that we are not locking the world out, we are locking ourselves in with them. The them that King refers to is the tucked away evil that we believe is outside but actually is inside. Homes are built for us to let down our guard and show the parts of ourselves we don't show anyone else. They exist for vulnerability, and once we've locked ourselves in with the evil, we are in a state in which that vulnerability can be manipulated and harm will come to us.
Help! Somebody help me, please! Somebody help! Oh God, help me! Please! Please help me! Oh!
But how come we rarely see haunted apartments or haunted airports? Why is it just haunted houses? Well, if you think about the connections between apartments or airports, those homes are temporary. It isn't as horrific when one sees a zombie enter through an apartment or airports. It is, however, when one enters a home, your home. Our homes are there as permanent solutions. Again, when an outside presence comes through, there's no place left for us to run, whereas a haunted airport, we can still find safety in a different location.
While the characteristics of a typical suburban house could be comfy, small or big, well-lit areas, lots of greenery surrounding it such as plants or trees, windows, a backyard, well-insulated areas, clean and, well, people residing inside of it, real haunted houses in which there is a belief where supernatural resides in them have the characteristics of desolation, isolation, very big spaces, are old, broken down, have the lack of light, squeaky, feel alive, and where you always feel being watched, incites terror and irrationality. The differences in these show how the exterior/interior home can truly impact someone. The horror industry knows this, and by adjusting the characteristics of one's home towards a more scary/haunted version of one, it shows how quickly a person can become frightened.
As we can see, houses are gold mines for horror. Let's take a look at the three major aspects of the house that the horror genre often plays with in the traditional haunted house story. First, the idea of the house. Like Kara mentioned earlier, haunted houses have distinct, unnatural exteriors. The physical features of the house allude to its haunted interior. Immediately, one can discern a haunted house from a regular house. It's obviously abandoned, with broken shutters, peeling paint, and dark broken windows. The interior is just as dilapidated. Like Mickey, most characters in haunted house stories are the only living people in the building, which instantly creates an eerie atmosphere. Houses are built to be occupied. Apart from their emotional significance as a safe haven and permanent home, their mere form is constructed with the sole purpose of shelter. Haunted houses play with this idea by abandoning the purpose of the house. Instead, they leave the shell of a house, void of anything except the haunting memories of the past. This leads to the next feature of the house that the traditional haunted house story utilizes: the house's history. The history of a haunted house is almost always the cause of the haunting. As Stephen King wrote in Danse Macabre, One might even say that the truest definition of the haunted house would be a house with unsavory history. The author must do more than simply bring on doors that bang open. The haunted house tale demands a historical context. The ghosts that haunt the houses in these stories most often have a history inside the house or on the estate grounds. The creepier the history of the house, the more twisted, psychotic, and bloodthirsty the ghost usually is. Take Hill House, for example. While the intentions of the spirit in Hill House were unclear, the history of the house itself is undoubtedly dark. As Dr. Montague describes, Hill House was a sad house almost from the beginning. Hugh Crane's young wife died minutes before she first was to set eyes on the house. The second Mrs. Crane died of a fall. The third Mrs. Crane died of what they used to call consumption. The multiple deaths on Hill House's property is Dr. Montague's largest explanation for the cursed nature of the house, and Hill House is far from the first to have such a backstory. The twisted histories of haunted houses are ultimately what caused the hauntings. Lastly, the dimensions of the house. The dimensions of the house are also unique to haunted houses. The layout of a haunted house can be strange and disorienting, elevating the eerie, off-putting atmosphere. A real-life example of these weird dimensions is the Winchester Mystery House. Said to be haunted by the ghosts of those killed with a Winchester rifle, the 160-roomed mansion contains a bizarre and sprawling layout. Doors to nowhere, staircases with dead ends, and dizzying twists and turns confuse both the visitors to the house and the spirits that have supposedly haunted the manor since its very first year of construction. Like the Winchester House, Hill House is also built in a disorienting manner. In fact, Dr. Montague even says that Hugh Crane was inspired by the Winchester House while designing Hill House, and that, quote, every angle is slightly wrong. Angles which you assume are the right angles you are accustomed to are actually a fraction of a degree off, end quote. Even the slightest shift of an angle can turn a familiar Euclidean structure into a foreign, unsettling place. Again, the traditional haunted house differs from our expectations of a normal home, creating a sensation of unease that slowly horrifies the audience.
Haunted houses exist to scare people. The central idea behind a haunted house is not new. People have entertained themselves with scary stories for centuries. The origins of the haunted house date back to the 19th century London, where a series of attractions were introduced to the public as forms of gruesome entertainment. Such attractions included an exhibition of a decapitated wax sculpture and death masks of guillotine victims. In America, the haunted house first emerged during the Great Depression as innocuous pranks by teenagers escalated to property damage, vandalism, and harassment. Parents decided to distract the tricksters during Halloween by decorating their basements and also holding house-to-house parties. Kids could scare themselves by traveling to different basements and experience unique scenes. But the haunted house did not develop into a cultural icon until Walt Disney paved the way for the haunted houses. Disneyland's Haunted Mansion opened in 1969. Disney brought the house to life through a series of complex illusions and props. Lisa Morton, the author of Trick or Treat, A History of Halloween, explains that the haunted house was so successful because ghosts were no longer simply sheets hung on a tree, but were actual shimmering, translucent figures that moved, spoke, and sang. Interestingly, the haunted house also has implications in the Cold War. During the Cold War, the threat of invasion and subversion led Americans to seek conformity in politics and culture. The development of the ideal nuclear family dominated society and emphasized the traditional roles of fathers leaving the house to go to work and mothers staying home to raise the children and take care of the house. The reinforcement of specific roles represented a form of protection against the threats of communism. As a result, the whole signified a miniature fortress that housed precious values against the nation's Red Scares. The reason why haunted houses were so effective at unsettling and scaring people is that it represented a violation of values and a breach of security. The haunted house triggered the specific set of phobic pressure points of a communist invasion, an assault towards the only protection American families had from the effects of the Cold War shook society to the bones.
Now let's look at your home. Protect it at all times. Don't permit fire hazards to collect. Unused paper and boxes, oily rags and waste, useless broken household goods. Such inflammable debris is a fire threat at any time. Think of your home as divided into connected spaces. Attic, bedrooms, living room, and so on. Spaces in which your loved ones live. If you have an attic, this may be where your children play, snug and secure, but helpless, completely dependent upon you for their safety. the bedroom where an ill or handicapped member of your family may be, the living room where the aged or infirm, helpless as children, may look to you for aid. Plan and practice how to assist your family to a prepared shelter without loss of time.
The haunted house evolved from a simple distraction from pranks to a violation of security and values. The effectiveness of a haunted house to scare is heavily dependent on the cultural and social events that occur. During the Great Depression, according to a Boys Craft guide, the pranks represented a way for young men and women to have fun without the danger of being pinched or punished. The economic disaster exacerbated the antics, leading to increased vandalism and public destruction. The chaos reflected a deep societal and cultural unease as people feared the future of their country. The haunted houses were developed to mitigate the chaos and direct the focus of society elsewhere. During the 1930s, the haunted house served as a response to societal fears, but during the Cold War, the haunted house evolved into a violation of security as it preyed on societal phobic pressure points. It represented the prospect of a communist assault. The haunted house is most effective during times of cultural and social unease because it preys on our fear of losing our only form of protection against the danger.